Dobar. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, so I guess I'm Croatian already. All right, I'm super excited to connect and learn with you all today. My name is Bolaji Ayodeji, and I'm a software engineer and developer advocate at Commerce Layer, where we build composable commerce APIs for developers, right? And so, alongside my work as a developer advocate, I'm passionate about some other stuff like sharing knowledge. I do that on my blog and newsletter. I'm passionate about documentation, web engineering, chess, and some other cool stuff. So if you like any of those things, feel free to connect with me on any of them, right? And okay. Yes, so you can also connect with me on Twitter at I am Bolaji Ayo, just in case you have any questions, right? And feel free to share some tweets about this talk so my manager thinks I did a good job, just in case I didn't, right? But anyways, yeah, feel free to reach out to me. And yeah, so just a minute to be sure we have the slides rolling. Is there anyone there? All right, so today we'll be talking about building composable commerce on the cloud for emerging markets. Sounds like a lot of words. But yeah, we'll get right into it, and then we hope that I hope we'll be able to cover a lot of stuff before we get the slides rolling. But anyways, let's just get started. So according to the, sorry, is there an issue? Okay. All right. So I guess we just start and then we'll join along with the slides. Yeah. So according to the Adobe Global Economy Index, right, global e-commerce sales is expected to hit like $5.5 trillion in 2022, right? And about 76% of adults in the US, for example, already shop online, right? That means a lot, right? And the thing around this is that more technologies are emerging this year, more online stores are erupting, and customers are making sales on an increasing number of devices, right? And as a result of this, businesses need to keep up with the increasing evolution of technologies, competition, and customer demands. And the failure to meet up with these demands would definitely lead to unhappy developers, unhappy customers, and that would eventually affect sales, right? Conversions and revenue. So today we will discuss around how composable commerce APIs can enable you to build a better developer and customer experience for your e-commerce business, right? And in the end, we would see how developer teams can specialize within an organization, right? And then optimize their agile development processes. Yeah, so we would cover some of this. Okay. Cool. So these are the things we're going to cover today, right? We'll just go through the evolution of e-commerce, and then we'll kind of see where we are today and understand how composable commerce works generally. All right. So what did e-commerce look like in the 20th century, right? These are like years before 2000, right? Is this thing working? Sorry. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's working now. Thank you. So initially we had Composable online ISPs for electronic transactions, right? In the 90s, we had stuff like, why is it not working? Electronic data interchange. And how this worked then was that you have a connection between your television with like an online store, and then it's like a wired connection, right? And then we had teleshopping, where people advertise products on your television, and then you make a phone call to purchase the item, they bring it to you, and stuff like that. And just after that, we had also Minitel pre-WW online service for B2C customer shopping, right? And this kind of like was all before the World Wide Web came into existence, right? And just after that, the WW was introduced, and then we had Amazon and some other shoppings like eBay, Etsy, and the rest, right? And then just after that, we had the web browser, which is like the Netscape Navigator, right? And we also began to have SSL, which meant more security, right, for websites on the internet. And then after that, we also started having domain names, and then the NSF was introduced to like regulate how all of these things work. And then PayPal was launched, we had payments, and we had more cool stuff in like the 20th century. Now, I call this the first 21st century, which is kind of like between 2001 and 2010, right? So basically, we had the rise of .com websites, right? And then we had Google Shopping, which then was called Frugal, which is kind of a nice name. I don't know why they changed it to Google Shopping. Basically, Frugal like has a comparison of different e-commerce websites and shows you differences in prices, right? And then we had the rise of mobile e-commerce. And often then you would find this in like vending machines like Coca-Cola and the others, where you like go there and then make your purchase, right? And then we had the PCI standard community, which was developed to ensure that the credit card space is like secured and they all abide by the standards, right? And then people started using social media, so it was easier for brands to reach customers on the internet, right? And then it was also possible for brands to advertise their products on platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and others, right? And then we began to see the rise of e-commerce monolith platforms like Magento, Shopify, and the rest, right? And then more and more evolution came into place. Now, the second phase of the world, which I call the second 21st century, is like between 2011 to 2020, right? And according to the US Department, this is the number of sales that was made in 2010 alone, which was kind of like a 14.8 increase in the US, right? And then now we started having digital stores being run physically, which means you can have your store online and you still have a physical store, and then you go to buy from both ends, right? And then we have the buy online and pick up in store strategy, where you can decide to make a purchase on the internet, but still go and pick it up yourself. I kind of like doing that sometimes, where I just, I prefer to shop for something online and then go pick it up myself. So this strategy was invented around this time. And then mobile shopping grew, iPads came into play, and it was a huge competitor for mobile phones, but it didn't really win. Most customers still prefer to shop on mobile phones, right? And then it was possible for you to shop on social networking sites like Reddit and Pinterest and the rest, right? And then we had more e-commerce monolith platforms come into the game like WooCommerce and the rest, right? And just after that, we experienced the eBay hack attack in 2014. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with that, where about 145 million records were lost. And Apple Pay came into the game. There were new ways to sell, coupons, subscriptions. Tons of stuff evolved around this time, and there were more ways for you to like attend to customer needs, right? And then we arrived at what we have now in 2001 to 2022, right? And basically what we see now is there is the growth of everything from the previous years. Everything I mentioned like grew. And then we have more focus around tooling, developer experience, customer experience, accessibility, responsive design, performance, and security. All this evolved over the years. And markets now and businesses try now to sell internationally to different markets. And there are more payment options now, more payment options, and more payment options. And while we had that, we also have more devices, right? Customers are making shops now on not just a mobile phone, also on different kind of devices like your fridge, your smart watches, and some other stuff, right? And then more online stores. I mean, you can imagine 10 years before now, there were less online stores as we have now. It's easier to shop anything on the internet right now, right? And then more technologies, and then more customer demands, and more, and more. There's more demands from the customers, there's more demands from the technology parts. Now, what do we observe from all this evolution is that technology evolution and customer demands is what leads to business opportunities for businesses, right? And that's the entire idea behind your e-commerce business, right? Everything you do on the engineering part is directly proportional to satisfying your customers. That's the entire reason why you have your e-commerce business, right? You want to make some sales, and to make some sales, you need to have happy customers. To have happy customers, you need to have happy tech. And that's the idea behind what we're talking about today. So what challenges are e-commerce businesses facing? I kind of like group this into three categories. The first one being customer experience, which I call satisfaction. The first challenge is that customers want fast experience and they want to be satisfied, right? It wouldn't be nice if I have to go to your website and try to purchase an item and then, the experience is slow and all that stuff, right? A lot of time businesses think that e-commerce is just about the marketing side, right? I have a product, just go ahead and find me customers, right? But then the thing is, you find customers and then they come to your e-commerce platform and the experience is still the same. So even though the digital marketers do their job, you still end up having no sales. And the second issue is that customers want to shop on more channels, right? We're in the 21st century now, and there's an evolution from how things were done as they are now, right? And the last challenge on the end of customers is they want a secured way for them to shop, right? They want to ensure that your platform is reliable for them. And that's one of the issues that hinder businesses from growing today because many people actually don't even find it safe to just input their credit cards on an e-commerce store to make a purchase. Probably you might not think that way, maybe because you've not experienced an attack or something when one of these platforms go down. But yeah, it's a thing. And the next category of challenges is the developer experience, which is like the tech behind everything, right? So in the traditional ways of building e-commerce, right, everything is like together. When we think about e-commerce, you think of the front end, the back end, and every single infrastructure that go into play, right? When you have that kind of system, it's kind of like very hard for you to like work together in a team. Every single change you make in one part affects the entire system, and then you have to redeploy, you have to like make different changes. It's harder for you to scale. Like there's just so many issues that like affect developer productivity and affects the system itself. The second thing is that building e-commerce requires a lot of engineering resources, right? And then there are different moving parts from the front end to the back end and every other single infrastructure, right? As you begin to make more changes to these platforms, right, you would need to adopt different changes. You would need to scale them at different times, right? But then the thing is trying to scale a monolith platform where you have everything coupled together is kind of difficult because some parts of the system might require different kind of scaling needs. But it's kind of difficult for you to do that because, making one change here affects everything and it's just a whole mess, right? And then the last thing is security and reliability. I mean, security is like one of the most important concerns in software engineering today. Just one single memory leak in the entire application, can bring down everything. And then it's harder for you to find issues in this part of the system. And then you have to redeploy everything. You have to write different kind of test suites and all of that stuff. And the last part is that there are issues with modularity and developer experience. It's harder for developers to like build different parts of the system into modules where they can reuse them across the entire application. And as I mentioned earlier, this in turn affects the developer experience. Imagine having to work at a company where the entire product, the entire system is like one huge code base. And then you join the company, you have to go through different files. It's kind of difficult for you to understand what you're doing. I mean, we might have been at that situation at several phases of our careers. And that's the thing behind the developer experience. The last part is the business experience, which is basically revenue, right? Every single person who creates a business wants to make money, right? And the first two things we mentioned is what leads to this part. Businesses want to make more sales. They want to retain their customers. They want to sell internationally, right? I have a market in Europe. I want to sell in the US. I want to sell in Asia and different other parts, right? Each of these countries have different trade laws. There are different issues around localization, tax laws, payments, and all that stuff, right? So it's a huge challenge for businesses to try and do this when, the data they need for each of those markets are kind of like different, right? And then, there is emerging markets. Businesses are trying to future-proof their businesses. They are trying to scale into new markets, developing countries, and then they're trying to meet up with customers in these countries where availability to the internet is like less than others, right? And this is that, and that is what the challenges that businesses are facing. So the question we have now would be like, how do we solve this problem? And that's where composable commerce come into play, right? So basically, the idea behind composable commerce is that developers get to, review, they get to select and, find various commerce solutions and then put them together based on a particular specific business need into an entire application. And what that means is you can have commerce APIs, you can have other management systems, customer relationship management, ERPs, product information management, recommendation engines, search, A/B and A/B testing, hosting and cloud services, tax management, checkout and payments, order fulfillment, and every single thing you can think about that goes on in an e-commerce platform, right? And now the idea behind this is that developers are able to find essential tools, secure tools that are available for them, and they customize this into a commerce flow based on business requirements. And what that means is that developers can find different API solutions. You get to find different composable microservices, headless solutions, micro-frontends. Just name the kind of tools you can think about, right? And when they find those tools, they are able to compose them into the architecture for the entire e-commerce business. And to make you understand these things better, when I mentioned the monoliths earlier, this is what it looks like, right? You have your front end and your back end in one system, everything in one code base deployed together, right? This leads to a lot of issues that we've discussed already. After that, we had what we call the headless architecture, where basically the front end is separated from the back end, and then the connection is the API layer, right? So you can have your next year's website somewhere, and then you have the back-end service separated. Now, this kind of solved some problems from the monoliths, and then the evolution continued. And then after that, we have the composable microservices. So basically what you see here is that you have your front end, and then you have different parts of the back end split into microservices. You have the commerce microservice, content microservice, search microservice, and any kind of microservice you will need. The idea behind this now is that teams are able to work independently without having to have interlocking relationships in the entire system, right? And this is one part of it. And to take it a step further, we had composable micro-frontends, which basically extends the flexibility of microservices to the front end. So at this phase, what you have now is a team handling one particular section of your e-commerce. You have your commerce micro front end, which is both the front end and the back end. And then you have content micro front ends, both the front end and the back end. And then at this point, you have different teams. So basically, you have your checkout team working on the checkout part of your e-commerce platform, right? And you have the cart separate, you have the UI separate, every single part into microservices. And the idea is that every single team is able to work independently, they are able to build independently, and at the end of the day, the architecture you come up with will be really performant, right? And the composable approach, the idea is that you're using what we call PBCs, which are called package business capabilities. And what this means is that you develop components based on specific business requirements, right? Usually when we talk about checkouts, businesses try so hard not to do so much on checkout because, it's a very integral part of the e-commerce business, right? You want to ensure that you don't lose money around that phase. But that's kind of limiting because at this point, even though you're trying to avoid payment issues, right, you want to ensure that the checkout experience is actually also good, right? And now having this means that you have different microservices and your checkout team can focus on delivering the best experience for your customers in that part. And then also every other team can work, your commerce team, your content team, your front-end developers can work independently and everyone would be happy, right? Now, a composable commerce solution includes stuff like individual components that can be autonomously developed by your team or by any external service. You also have APIs connecting these individual components. You have the front-end logic decoupled from the business logic. You have integrations with any kind of API external service that you desire. You also can leverage on cloud computing services. You can share real-time data using webhooks. You can, build anything on top of your existing data. And that's the idea behind having a composable and modular system. Now, with all we've said so far, when you think about the developer experience, Composable commerce allows developers, to build multiple sales channels, allows them to build integrations, allows them to, integrate with third-party services, and much more. Now, on the side of the customers and the businesses, with composable commerce, you can combine different tools also. Those tools can be built internally or externally, and you deliver a unified customer experience. And at the end of the day, you have happy customers. You get to having increased sales, increased revenue, and all this stuff. The thing around e-commerce is that businesses are so focused on making money that they forget that the money comes from the tech itself, right? So you need to actually sit down and try and evaluate your current architecture and see which part is kind of like affecting this part of sales, which part is actually affecting this part of customer satisfaction. So the idea is the moment you begin to think about your customers and their satisfaction, you begin to understand where they are having issues in your platform, and then you go into the tech part and see how you can solve that. And the whole idea of composable commerce allows you to, to adopt changes, to make new changes easily. It allows you to experiment new changes and to future-proof. Now, this is what that architecture would look like, where you have like your presentation layer, you have APIs, and you have different microservices down, powering everything. So in 2022 today, when you talk about e-commerce, basically you have something like this, your front end, which can be a web app, a mobile app. It can be IoT, right? It can be your smart fridge. There are different kind of applications and different kind of devices, right? Where you have like a nice and usable UI UX, you use frameworks, UI components, you probably want to use React, you use Storybook for a design system, stuff like that. And then you choose any kind of web rendering strategy, SSG, SSR, whichever one you want to do. And then maybe you use TypeScript, performance, etc. And then you also have your content and your content management systems where you manage content. Think about having text, images, video, and the whole idea is you have structured data, and it's that structured data you will use when building the actual stuff. You now choose like a content management system independent from the entire architecture itself. And then you fetch data from your content management system into your front end using the SKU as a connector, right? And then you also want to localize data, right? You want to ensure that the content you have, that if you want, at that point, it's like you have different languages for different countries that you support. And on the side, you would then have your commerce engine and your order management system. At this phase, this is where you manage your markets, inventory models, stock locations. You manage your SKUs, SKU lists, prices, and all the commerce resources you can think about when it comes to e-commerce. I have all of them listed out here, right? And then aside from the commerce engine itself, you would have, you leverage cloud computing. In developing your e-commerce projects, you use version control. You have stuff like automated testing, databases, you store data, you have analytics, you have A/B testing, hosting and security. You use CDNs, you have containerization, and every single stuff you can think about when it comes to cloud computing. Now, at the end of all of this, you have something like this, where you have your commerce engine at one part, and your merchants go there, to handle every single data for your e-commerce business, and then they can access that data using an API, right? Your content managers can go to your CMS, it can be headless, and then they go and manage content there, right? And while your developers work in the code repository, those developers being split into different teams, like the cart team, the checkout team, the UI team, name them, right? And each of these are microservices that are then deployed to the CDN, and then they have like a beautiful experience for both your customers and your developers. So let's kind of talk about how composable commerce supercharges the customer experience. Earlier, we mentioned the challenges that customers, developers, and businesses face. So how does this architecture solve those problems? The first thing is that customers now have the capability to have faster omnichannel experiences. And that means that you can now begin to build more. The idea is you have your data on one hand and you have an API. You can focus on building for the web, you can focus on building for mobile, you can focus on building for anywhere, right? If I had even the television and anything from one data source point, right? And then at the end of the day, you are able to provide more local and preferred payment options for your customers, right? That's also one part where businesses fail to optimize for. You focus so much on making money, and then you forget to realize that customers kind of like wants you to serve them in like payment methods that they are more preferred, they prefer more to use, right? With issues with security and all of that, customers don't really trust you with giving them your credit cards. In 2022 now, you can make payments with crypto and several other ways. Last month, I made an experiment where, you can make payments for a product by making a tweet, right? And that's the idea behind having composable commerce, where you leverage platforms that allow you to like build stuff like that. So instead of exchanging cash for a product, I give you my tweets for the product. And I mean, that is valuable because I would promote your business and then you give me a product. Imagine using that kind of stuff at a conference like this where, to get a t-shirt for my boots, you do something for me, right? And that idea can be built when you leverage composable commerce, and then you have platforms that allow you to do these things. And then customers also now are satisfied, right? And it's no-brainer, right? Once you have satisfied customers, you would retain them. I can't count the number of times I've like been to some websites where I try to shop and the experience is poor. I would not come back there, right? But imagine the number of times you shopped at your favorite platforms. You go back there, right? So it's not just about the product itself, but the experience itself. Now, how does composable commerce supercharge the developer experience itself? I don't know if anyone here kind of like works on an e-commerce project. So I think probably right now you can be thinking of all the challenges you faced and how it's really difficult for you, right? With this architecture, you can now have independent and agnostic setup for all your teams. Your front-end team, your back-end team, your content team, everyone working independently and building their own products, seamlessly, right? And this will ensure that there is an effective development flow and the collaboration is very, very, very easy. So when I join your company, I don't have to install your code base with like every single thing and like millions of files. I can just go. I'm working on the checkout team. I go and install the checkout code. I'm working on the front-end checkout. I go and install the front-end checkout micro-frontend. I'm working on the back-end for the checkout team. I go and install the back-end for the checkout microservice. And that's how it works. And then at the end of the day, you have a flexible architecture where it's easier for you to have an agile process, right? And at the end of the day, your architecture is really, really lightweight because now they are all individual components that are all deployed autonomously. And businesses, right? I think that's the cool part for those who are in charge of the business parts of e-commerce, right? How does this help you? The first thing is that you have more room now to adapt to new market opportunities. Remember I mentioned earlier that the technology evolution and customer demands is what gives businesses opportunities. With this, it's easier for you to decide to say, I want to expand my business to Italy, for example. You can do that using the existing data you have. And all you have to do is just work with the changes that you need to do in each of those countries. Right? It's easier for you to evolve. It's easier for you to future-proof and adapt to the evolving changes in the 21st century. It's also easier for businesses to innovate, to be creative. Think about cool stuff you can do for your businesses. E-commerce is beyond just a website and then click a product right now. There are several ways you can serve your customers, right? And with a monolith application, you really can't do anything. You're kind of like locked in. But with this, you can now begin to think about different ways to serve your customers. You can think about having smart fridges where, when I put a jar of milk inside, it scans that I have one milk in the fridge. And then when the milk is finished, there's an application that's connected to your payments, and then automatically you place an order for that jar of milk you replaced, and then you get a knock on your door, the jar of milk is there. There's so many creative ways you can serve your customers that way, right? So if probably you're generating so many revenue for your business now, think about more ways you can do that with composable commerce, more ways you can serve your customers. And that's the idea behind everything we're talking about today. So it's dangerous to have unsatisfied customers in this modern, competitive, and fast-evolving age. And that's why you need to look into modern architectures that would eliminate the factors that is causing dissatisfaction for your customers. And the idea of why you're doing that is you're trying to grow your business, right? And like I mentioned earlier, the only way you grow your business is by satisfying your customers. And the only way to satisfy your customers is by improving your technical logic. So I have an example here of what the actual e-commerce store looks like when you're leveraging composable commerce with different micro-frontends. From the entrance, you can see, you select a country, which gives you a localized experience. right? You can see here you have categories, and you select a product. You can filter by different components like gender, price, categories. All of this data are managed on your order management system. And if you notice, there is a cart here, and that cart is like one microservice being powered separately, right? And then you can select different products, and when you add to carts, this is not one. How do I put it? It's all decoupled. So the checkout is separate, the cart is separate, the UI is separate. And that's the idea behind composable commerce. If you observe at the cart, I select the number of items I want. And then when I check out, it takes me to a different experience, right? So this is an example of what you might be thinking about when you want to build your own e-commerce using composable commerce architectures and, compiling different dev tools and all of that stuff, right? So yeah, what's next? The thing is, earlier I mentioned different statistics of what is changing. But the thing is, there will continue to be more changes. Both tech and both customer demands. There will always be more and more and more and more and more. And the moment you decide not to attend to those more and more, you then begin to have more issues for your businesses, right? So you need to ensure your architecture is flexible, it's adaptable. So whenever these changes come, you can easily, key into them and do all kind of nice stuff. So you can increase changes to your businesses and attain long-term success. So I mentioned a couple of things today. You can scan this QR code to access all the resources around composable commerce. If you want to read the experiments around making payments without using cash and everything around composable commerce, you can get them here. So thank you very much.